What up, everyone? K-Ruggs, the Soberdog, coming at you. Special guest today, two special guests, Nason and Coarie, and they're going to tell us about their story, give us a little bit of everything, and say what up. And so you guys can see their page, their channel, their content. Awesome connecting with people in recovery. What's going on, guys? You want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure, my name is Nason.
And I'm Coarie.
And we are recovered addicts who are just excited to be a part of the recovery community, and we share our stuff through YouTube.
Yeah, awesome. That's incredible. That's how, I just found you guys like everyone else, and probably vice versa, just watching other content and addiction stuff and collabs, and like we were just talking about, just connecting with everybody. So why don't you break down kind of, the rough stuff, as they say. How did your addiction get going and all that?
Is it all right if I go?
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
So I started out, I don't have, a story of terrible. My parents were wonderful, and I came up from an even Stevens background, and mom and dad, mom is a teacher, dad is a priest. So, I mean, hey, it works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they were not alcoholics. They are not one of us. And I didn't grow up around bad people. I think that my progression happened just through the introduction of alcohol, and it grew as I kind of grew up, So the terrible started pretty later on in life, but as a lot of people know, alcohol is sort of like a rite of passage in everyday society, and when we in high school and whatnot, there were drinks here and there, and I partied here and there, but I wasn't a full-grown alcoholic just yet. Although the early signs really happened, the further we went along. So I grew up, we are in Columbus, Mississippi. So I grew up in Mississippi, but lived all over the place. Gosh, we lived in Denver, Colorado. I lived in Tennessee, went to like 4 different high schools. And it wasn't because we, had any financial troubles or anything. Dad just picked a new life to live every couple of years. He was getting another degree and another job and whatnot. So I guess my sobriety date is November 3rd, 2018. And 3 years before that, I dove heavy into alcohol. And I started drinking early in college, and then later on after college, sort of found my way to, the bar was a normal thing. I partied pretty heavy through college and after college, but my drinking didn't really affect anybody until, we'll say, like, probably 2012. I was in a long-term relationship, and things were getting pretty heavy, and we weren't happy at home. And I started staying out later with like old college roommates and stuff, and like not coming home at night and drinking. And when that relationship ended, I sort of took a turn for the worse, and alcohol took a bigger presence in my life. I stayed, I was staying out late. I would show up to work drunk. And now I think the functional alcoholic is a real term because I drank and drank and drank. Yeah, but I still managed to get to work on time in the morning. And that lasted my entire alcoholic career, to be honest. I didn't lose a job, but I had to step down from a position, a good paying job, because I was just like belligerent showing up to work, and that doesn't bode so well when you're working in corporate. So I found a new career, and at this point I was drinking most days and really heavy on the weekends. At the time I moved out of my apartment and moved in with somebody else who just had we read a book that calls that the tornado effect, and I was a tornado in the lives of a couple of people. Started pushing people away. Now the heavy stuff, I got a DUI in 2015. That was my first bout with jail time. I had been to jail once before that, but it was just drunken, stupid teenager kind of thing. I was in jail for 4 days, and that's my stint with jail time. So, I didn't, yeah, it's fine. I didn't practice with any other substances. I'm kind of an enigma maybe in the drug world. Like, I didn't do a lot of any hard drugs. I once smoked weed, and I took half an Adderall once. Yeah. The other side of it, I haven't really shared it with much, but alcohol took a different course. after my DUI that kept me from driving, but I just kept drinking. It got to the point where my friends didn't want to be a part of my life. My family was calling me at 2, 3 in the morning. Dad was showing up in places after I had called him and, oh gosh, said terrible things to him. I tried to control it, which means like I guess in my bedroom, I had a tendency to like fall over and hit the wall. There were patches all over my wall from where I patched the wall from all the holes I put.
He's a big guy. Like
I can
So
tell.
and I know you're an athlete.
Yeah.
You're a football player, right? So like my big thing was I'm not small, but I'm 6'2" and 240. So like it's not when I fall and hit something,
I'm 240 as well. Yeah.
All right. So
I'm not 6'2", but yeah.
and when, I think at that point, I started to physically harm myself. So one night I grabbed a knife and I cut my wrist open. Didn't manage to get deep enough to get the vein, but woke up and a roommate who was like, what happened? I was like, I don't know. So I bandaged it up and went to work. And, I think the scariest thing about my problem was that there were no consequences. It's like alcohol is everywhere. And when you're single, not married, no kids, folks just sort of live through that. They're like, he's just having fun. He's just being who he wants to be. And that means that he doesn't give a shit about it. Was that I didn't see who I was affecting. The ripple effect of that was that friends were scared of me. People that I knew but maybe weren't close to were talking, they were, and I didn't know it. They were saying things like, he's just, I don't hang out with that guy. He's not a good guy, and it's true. I don't think I was a good guy. I still don't think I'm a great guy, but I work at it. My defects are pretty prevalent. My ego is large, and that's a tough thing to work through. Well, by the time I had gotten deep into that, and that skips over a lot, but the truth is that at the end of my journey, this was the last night I ever drank. I got super, super hammered before going to a bar. Now, I remember going to 1 or 2. I think I swung at somebody, and they kicked me out of that first bar. They obviously didn't hit me back. They should have, but I didn't have a black eye. So I'm driving on the interstate. I got a flat tire. I pulled over, and I managed to put my keys, my phone, and my wallet in my pocket, and I started walking. And I put some obscure Facebook status that said like, I'm going to Memphis, and then, I woke up the next morning in a Love's gas station in a chair next to a dryer. And, I think I don't know that I was to the point where my body was, needed alcohol, but I was a blackout artist. So when I woke up the next morning, I wasn't sure how I got there for the first, say half an hour or what I had done. So I called my dad, and it was probably 6 o'clock. And I called the guys at work, when I came and got me. When I got to work, they handed me the plans for the day and said, let's get started. There were no consequences. I was doing whatever I wanted, as long as I wasn't physically harming or myself or others that they knew of. Life was ongoing. Things just kept moving. And so that's when I knew.
I was saying
on the inside
you were crushed, probably.
Oh, I was dying. I was lonely. I was just too chicken to go through with it. And then, anger, and alcohol has a way of taking those emotions and just multiplying them tenfold. So I was angry, depressed, a sociopath, just all over. So Dad, I called, my dad came and said, I was like, I need some help. And he said, well, there's a therapist nearby. And I was like, no, that's not enough. He took me to this guy, and the guy was like, look, I can put you in a rehab if that's what you want. And I was like, you know what, just throw away the keys, put me away, thinking that's what was going to happen. And so he recommended I do medical detox. So I did that for like 4 days. And then they sent me to a place here called the Pines and Katy Hill of Columbus, Mississippi. And I went for 30 days. I got a call from my boss while I was there, and he's like, "You cured yet?" And I'm like, "No, I'm not real sure that's how this works." Yeah. And so I finished 90 days, decided to stay. I work in granite, so like I move stone all day. So I got a job doing the same thing here, never left. And not only did I stay, but we built a life of sobriety with a 12-step program, which I may have taken quite literally. You know, like they talk about, you know, the steps, and then by the time you're done, you feed the message to other people. Well, I didn't like the idea of just staying within those four walls. I try to adhere to their principles, you know, where I don't practice, you know, bringing them up in media and whatnot. So you would know which group I'm talking about. But so I did that. And then we got some people that weren't so happy when I decided that, you know, I'm going public, you know, with my addiction. So we've been sharing it with multiple people with the aim, you know, that we, not just spread the message, but we were trying to do something different. Everybody was talking about, you know, sobriety stories. And then they were talking about how they followed these steps, but nobody was really sharing like what they were doing in their daily lives. So we decided that, you know, we wanted to tell our story and other people's, and we wanted to sort of, you know, not necessarily Facebook highlights, but every time we did something fun, we wanted to show people that, like, if we could fill a car up with gas and go, we could live a happy life. And it didn't take much to be better than we were before. And on the flip side of that, I met a blonde, and we were engaged, and I met her in okay, all right, I'm gonna say this. Okay. All right, so I was in after the Pines of Katy Hill, I went to a sober living house here, and I'll keep them out of it just to not name names, but you know, all sober living houses have different sets of rules, and I'm not a God guy, you know, that's not my thing. Spiritual, maybe a guy that believes there's a purpose, but you know, God is mentioned in the book that we read a lot, and that's just not my forte. That's not where I am. So I didn't really fit in with this crowd. And they also had a rule that said you don't, you know,
like rule number one is no girls.
Is no girls. And so on the side, outside of there, I saw this blonde at a meeting and was like, oh gosh. And so one day she messaged me on Facebook and said, your name's Philip? And I'm like, no, I go by Nason. Anyway, to make the story short, we basically decided that we should move in together, and I left that house. And
you didn't waste any time. Wow.
No. Well, we had a lot of hard conversations. So when people say, you know, don't get involved, I think the general was like 6 months to a year. Yeah. And we had some hard conversations about, you know, our recovery and, you know, where we were at. Is this a good idea? But we did take a leap. So we did go against the grain. That's the truth. But 2 years later, we're happy, joyous, and free together. Probably just because of those hard conversations and things like that. So today, you know, I think without the presence of alcohol, we're not afraid of it. You know, that I think the fear in the beginning is that you can't go anywhere without alcohol being present. And I'm not a person who wanted to be afraid of that. So we went anywhere and everywhere. We've gone to 2 or 3 bars to have like lunch, you know, and dinner, and that doesn't bother us. You know, we face the fear, and we just live like this outstanding life. And
awesome. Making up for lost time.
Yeah, you know, I feel like we were both kind of asleep before we, you know, adjusted without these, you know, mind-altering chemicals, and now all of a sudden we decided to get up off our asses and go live. What was the first adventure we went on right outside of our rehab / whatever? We went skydiving. So nice. I'm not sure that's like a sober decision for everybody, but we were sober, and but that you know, internal high of being happy, doing something amazing that not a lot, that's living life. And that's what we have been practicing since. So
that is incredible. You guys genuinely look super happy and passionate, and I could just imagine like the deep conversations ahead of time, and just knowing like, we're going to go through this together. And
yeah. Well, on our first date, like we're sitting across the table from each other and I looked at him and I'm like, hey, you know, you're cute and all, but you're not worth relapsing over. Like, I'm just gonna put that out there.
Oh my God.
But you know, that was one of the biggest things. That was one of the biggest things we talked about was like, we have to keep our recovery separate. And yeah, it's going to mesh at times, but like, we have to do this side by side. You know, we have to each have our own recovery story. It can't just be like, oh, well, we're just a package now.
That's such a good point. That is so true. I'm a big 12-step person as well. And but I dated a girl in 12-step last year. And like, that was our number one rule is like separate recovery. Like, of course, like you said, it's going to mesh, but we had our own meetings, our own thing, and recovery always comes first. If anything jeopardizes that, like, the other one will be respectful enough to say, I relapsed or whatever, so I don't drag you down, so to speak, and get that separation. But that's incredible. It's funny you mentioned the skydiving. My brother just called me the other day and he's like, you want to go skydiving 3 weeks? And we were supposed to go in Las Vegas a couple years ago and I didn't make the weight because I'm 242 and it was 240 at the time. So I got to make sure I stay down. You're a big guy too. Did they have a weight limit? Was it 250?
I think it was probably 250. I didn't weigh that much then. I think I was like 220 maybe when we went. And that's funny you said that because the guy they strapped to me was he's little, like he was probably 5 foot and super tiny. And I just didn't understand. I'm like, you want me to jump? And then like I'm not gonna support him. Like that's not how this works. And you know, my life is on the line and there's no insurance that covers this. You know, why? What is going on? I want to go home. You know, and then we made it work. So
anyway. That's funny. Coarie, what about you? Yeah, you want to tell a little bit of your story?
Yeah, you know, Nason said that he didn't have much experience with drugs. I had all the experience, like enough for both of us.
Okay.
You know, I say this a lot is like Nason and I are cut from like two totally different cloths. Like our families are so different. Like I grew up with, you know, a parent that has addiction issues and, you know, just a lot of chaos growing up. And then, you know, as a young teenager, you know, of course, you know, drinking here and there and then smoking pot, you know, and then taking benzos and then taking opiates. And, but I would say like late teens, early 20s was more just like that party phase. And I was known as like the bubbly girl that was going to have fun and, you know, the life of the party. And then I went through like a terrible relationship. My ex-husband was just not a nice person at all. And there's a lot of chaos that went on with that. And I had gotten in trouble for prescription forgery. Oh. And so since I'd never been in any like major trouble, I got put on drug court. And I realized very quickly, like, hey, they're not going to test me for alcohol because it was brand new when I went. So like I just started drinking like a fish because, you know, I needed something like a good little addict. I'm like, okay, well, I can just drink. And so I just became like this raging alcoholic. And I did have a period, I guess like 2015, where I got sober for about a year. Okay. And I had a guy that I dated as a teenager walk back in my life. And I'm like, hey, things are a little crazy right now. And he's like, I don't care. So like he would drink and I went through like really, really tough thing. My ex-husband got full custody of our kids and I just like lost my mind. And the girl that was my roommate at the time, like I would, like she'd go to the bathroom and I'd start smelling something and I'm like, what's she doing in there? And turns out she's in there smoking meth. And I'm like, hey, like, let's check this out, you know, thinking that's a great idea. And I had been sober for a year at this point. So I just was like, you know what, let's do it. And I started smoking meth and then, you know, started shooting it and it was over with from there. Like I spent 3 years just like running all over the US, just high as a kite. And that guy was super, super abusive to me and he almost killed me. So like that time that he almost killed me, like I ended up having a crush injury to my throat, fractured cheekbone, like face was all busted. And I showed up at my parents' house and was like, hey, like, I don't know what to do. And they're like, you can't stay here. Like, no, we're not messing with it. Like my family had just disowned me at that point. And so I like, did my begging and pleading. And, my dad's like, okay, look, like you can stay here, but I'm not putting up with any of your crap. Like, so like that obsession for that needle was just like constantly like at my head. And so I just started drinking real heavily to try to like, curb that craving, because I knew I didn't want to shoot up anymore. And I got to the point where like I couldn't sleep. I was losing my mind. The only way I slept was if I drank enough to pass out. And I ended up in pancreatic failure and spent like 30 days in ICU. And the doctors are all like, if you keep drinking, you're going to die. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So I didn't drink for like 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital, and then just right back to it. And my dad just came to me one day and he's like, listen, like you have 3 options. Like, and he like handed me these papers and he's like, here's commitment papers to the state hospital. And he's like, I'm going to keep you there for as long as my lawyer can keep you there. He's like, or you can go to rehab, or you can get the F out of my house forever. And I was like, well, I guess I'll go to rehab. Like, you have to look up Whitfield, the state hospital in Mississippi, and you're like, okay, you made a great choice.
Whitfield, I will.
So yeah, like so I came up to Columbus for rehab, and like turned out my dad said that it was like the furthest away from the coast that he could find. And he was like, I knew that you wouldn't get sober home. So I did my 90 days at an all women's treatment center, which was very interesting. And then I stayed in their transition house for about a month, and then just got on my feet and got a townhouse and kidnapped this guy from the sober living house. And
wow.
Yeah.
That is so incredible.
That's like the Disney condensed version of my story.
Yeah. You touched on something that was I could just feel it, and being an IV user myself, that needle obsession. Oh my God. Is that like, I have never experienced anything like that. And then talking about using, basically like substituting addictions, but in our mind, it's like, I'm not IV, so I could drink, or whatever the other thing is,
right?
Or I need to drink to deal with the next day, or I'm going to go nuts. That's powerful. And I could just totally understand and relate to that.
Yeah. That's just something that like, unless you've been there, like you will never get it. Like, I'm sure you could explain it to someone all day long, like how bad that mental obsession is, but like until you do it, because like I'd been around like IV users before, and I was that person like rolling a bowl, like, ew, like that's gross, and then when I started doing it, I was like, okay.
Yeah. It's so powerful, and it becomes our lover, our best friend, our everything. Yeah. I tell people that sometimes too, and they think I'm nuts.
Nothing else matters but that.
Yeah. But like quitting alcohol, drugs, whatever, like it's like losing a family member, and they don't get it. And I'm like, well, it's because you're not an addict or an alcoholic, but like we use this thing 8-9 times a day, every day for a decade. Like that's more time than I spend with anyone in my life. This thing becomes me, and it's
right. Well, like you're losing a part of yourself because you become that person for so long. Sure. And then you're like, oh wow, like what happened to this other side of me? Like I have to give this away, and I don't know who to be without that.
Yep. So true. And Nason said it too a minute ago about like just I forgot how you put it, like I was sleeping the whole time, and then like life came in recovery, and that's just so accurate. it's not you're just existing in addiction, in alcoholism addiction. And then like life, like experiencing life is so different and awesome. That is incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've become like this huge crybaby.
You watch like a commercial when the dad and the mom are hugging the kid. Oh my God.
Yeah.
We took a trip out west for our honeymoon, and now this has happened before, but not to the scale that happened this time. We went to I guess it was in
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. You know, she's seen a lot, but never like a frozen lake or the mountains to the scale that we saw in the Tetons. And so we're pulling up, and she's watching this frozen lake go by, and we stop at like a viewpoint to get out, and there are people around. There are people, genuine people, and she's in the car. I'm
like, I mean, like full on ugly crying, and I'm just like,
oh my God. That, to me, that's beautiful.
and the more I'm trying to control it, the worse it gets. And he's like, "Babe, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, I'm just happy."
That's like your first time experiencing life or something. It's incredible.
Well, I mean, I've been using since probably 13 years old.
Same here.
And yeah, so like besides that 1 year, in that 1 year, I was still miserable because I wasn't working a program. I was trying to control everything myself. So like, I don't have any memories that weren't clouded by some sort of chemical. So now I'm like, oh, this is what life is. Like, okay, I have feelings and emotions. And
that is so true. Wow. I'm a firm believer too in like the when we start using heavy, I don't know how they put it exactly, like your brain, your maturity stop. And then when you get sober, that's where you're starting. So like, I'm basically like, I wasn't daily using at 13, but about 16, 17, pretty much. So like at 29, I'm a 17-year-old, like learning how to be an adult, it's crazy. Well, guys, shout out all your stuff. What's your channel? You guys do social media, blast everything so everyone can check you guys out.
Well, if anybody gets the chance, I would head over to youtube.com/tellyourstory. And actually, I think it's youtube.com/c/tellyourstory. I don't know why they did that, but did you notice that? Yeah. So, but Tell Your Story is pretty easy to know. It's just a white emblem with Tell Your Story on it. And then I think on Instagram, it's Tell Your Story Vid. So, and if they're reaching out and they want to tell a story, our email's listed there. And for a more like personal look at us, our Instagram goes deeper into just what we do, on our weekends, really. So anyway, that's us.
Awesome. Nason's got that perfect voice for it.
He does.
Tell your story.
You should hear Bill speak.
Oh man, that's an interesting guy.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, thank you guys very much, and I appreciate it, and can't wait to connect with you again. We'll have different topics or whatever.
Yeah. Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Thanks a lot.
All right, everyone. Check out the video. Check out their channel, all their stuff. Nason and Coarie and K Ruggs the Soberdog, and we're out. See ya.